You know what about this project, especially I have the association of opening the treasure box, which was hidden for many years. You unlock it, and then you have this wow feeling, like how is it possible that it was hidden for so many years?
Thanks God that our language survived, that our folklore survived, our songs survived, and I think this is also the reason that the nation as a nation survived.
Музика виникла від мови української, а не просто так, що хтось придумав там.
I can really relate so much to it because the words are really powerful. It's basically a continuous prayer that you can't have, you can basically have an amen to.
And then if you start digging in the history, and then you find a lot of tragic things and very tragic history of all these composers.
This piece by Lysenko, who was around the same time as Tchaikovsky. And I mean, Tchaikovsky's music to me is of course very well known, and Lysenko's is not.
I think it's just so sad that still we are so unaware of the treasures of the many composers in Ukraine.
I was so happy to finally have a good chance to show that you can make a difference in the world, not only by playing music, but also to use your music to work for peace and try and show the world what they haven't seen before, what they should see.
Pianist Natalya Pasichnyk performs all over the world and lives in Stockholm, but she returns frequently to her native Ukraine. After the Maidan uprising in 2013-14, she has become passionate about putting Ukrainian music on the map.
I am living in Sweden more than 20 years, and of course it's a country which I like and love, but you know, it's like in my situation, it's like having two children, and you love them very much, both of them. But this child which has more problem, it needs more love. So this is the situation about Ukraine. Of course, in this situation, both my heart and my mind and everything is with Ukraine.
Natalya invited a group of top-level Swedish musicians to a recording of Ukrainian chamber music. Ukrainian journalist Valentina Romaniuk decided to document her journey and invited Swedish colleague Sofia Nyblom to join the team. Together, they embarked on a project to rediscover Ukrainian history through its music and its composers. Between performances, Natalya often returns to her hometown Lviv, the cultural capital of Ukraine. Here, she attended the music boarding school and later the music academy, during the period when Ukraine broke free from the Soviet Union. At the academy, Natalya took her first steps as a pianist and learned about the Ukrainian composers whose music was never performed in the Soviet Union and is unknown even to this very day.
There are, of course, historical reasons why Ukrainian music is unknown. The bigger part of Ukraine belonged to Russian Empire for many hundred years. And as an artist, if you wanted to make a career and be famous, you had basically one choice. You had to go to Russia and become their artist. And this is how we know them in the West for example, Bulgakov, Gogol, Malevich, Repin, and the list is very long. But those who stayed and tried to develop the national school, they basically could count only on, if not being killed or sent into Siberia, in best case, just being ignored.
Valentin Silvestrov is revered for the fragile poetry of his music. Despite being expelled from the Union of Composers and denied publishing in Soviet times, his music today holds a wide international appeal.
Коли ти пишеш на українській мові, то сама мова породжує музику, яка є вже українською. Від мови музика виникла від мови українська, а не просто так, хтось придумав там.
I think Silvestrov is very underrated composer. It's about him Arvo Pärt said that if he would choose one contemporary composer, he would choose Valentin Silvestrov. That his music is wonderful, but most of us will understand this much later.
Despite his claims of being apolitical, the events which unfolded during the Maidan Revolution affected composer Valentin Silvestrov deeply, to the point where he changed the style of his writing. Valentin Silvestrov was on the Maidan from day one and observed the mounting tension. He heard the Ukrainian national anthem being sung, sounding more and more like a prayer, and he was inspired to react.
Я взагалі такий асоціальний був, аполітичний, але ця ситуація... І я на Майдані був, і з першого дня я бачив, як це розвивається. І зараз виник великий цикл, називається «Майдан 214». Це акапельний хор, і це більше 40 хвилин. І там структура така – гімни і молитви. І молитви. І це такий код, який на Майдані був. Вони співали гімн і читали молитву.
Georgian star violinist Lisa Bachashvili performed on the Maidan on the Day of Independence 1 year after the Maidan uprising.
I felt from the first moment when I arrived in Ukraine, that it was one of the most peaceful country that I could imagine. The people are peaceful and kind and generous, and this is really almost impossible to imagine that there is war in this country.
Du vet, för mig skulle man kunna dela självklart livet före och efter Majdan. Det var väldigt starkt på alla sätt, och jag kommer ihåg att jag har ju cancellerat flera av mina engagemang för att jag helt enkelt kunde inte åka och göra mitt jobb ordentligt.
The recording project of Natalya Pasichnyk has been planned in close collaboration with her sister, singer Olga Pasichnyk.
When the whole drama in Ukraine started around 2 years ago, for everyone who has just a drop of dignity and compassion, it's just simply impossible to wake up and to go on stage knowing that in the same time someone is dying for you to make this possible for you.
Men överhuvudtaget som artist är det väldigt lätt att bli sån här anpassningsbar och anpassa sig, för att man vill så gärna uppnå någonting med sitt yrke, med sitt karriär, med allt. Men nu kom det så nära den här förändringen i världen så att man kunde inte bara leva vidare och spela sin Mozart och må bra, utan man var tvungen att ta ställning.
me and for Natalya was very important to choose the music we love, we believe in. We believe in the beauty of this music and the power of this music, that this music can convince the West Europeans that the Ukrainian culture, Ukrainian music, it's still huge terra incognita, but what a beautiful one.
We choose in this project to gather music by composers who share the same tragic fate. For example, everybody knows the Christmas song, Carol of the Bells, la 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 la. But not many people know that this is Ukrainian composer Mykola Lysenko who wrote it, and he was killed by KGB in his 30s. And this fate was common for many Ukrainian composers.
Due to the suppression of Ukrainian identity, the main format for Ukrainian music has been the intimate, the music of home and of traditions.
Because of these family traditions, we still have people sitting around the table and they sing their folk songs, but still in Ukraine these traditions survive. The only chance to survive before you will be killed is just to speak your language at least at home, or to sing some folk songs, to talk to your child.
The constant struggle to defend the Ukrainian musical identity is also about remembering the music of the past. Classical Ukrainian composers have traditionally been forced to subscribe to the Russian historical narrative under threat of incarceration, exile, or death. Mykola Lysenko is for Ukraine what Sibelius is to Finland, and Lysenko's music is a cornerstone of Natalya Pasikhnyk's project. His home in Kiev was the cradle of the Ukrainian Romantic School of Composition.
Den är ju helt otrolig känsla att vara här. Här är det hans instrument som han satt och komponerade. Den är från 1895, så självklart det låter inte som ny Steinway precis. Men det är en väldigt speciell känsla att vara här faktiskt.
Mykola Lysenko was a key figure in the birth of Ukrainian classical music during the Romantic period. He established a music academy in Kiev, and his own music is infused with a melos of Ukrainian folk music. The Lysenko Academy of Music became a hothouse for the romantic Ukrainian imagination. The Ukrainian Club, a meeting place for poets, musicians, and writers, inspired each other and gave birth to a narrative of Ukrainian cultural identity separate from the Russian.
Ну, це був центр не тільки музичний, взагалі наш музей видатних діячів, теж унікальне місце – це український Парнас. Він записав близько, ми не знаємо знову ж точну дату, не все збереглося, але не менше 1500 народних пісень, 500 з яких він свої аранжировки видав за життя.
Lysenko wrote nearly 90 songs based on the poetry of Taras Shevchenko, and his defense of the memory of this iconic poet actually became the downfall of the Ukrainian Club. The authorities forced the composer to close it in 1912 under accusations of propaganda.
Він помер через 3 дні після закриття українського клубу. І в записнику, де він тільки підраховував витрати, збоку є запис, тут можна подивитися. Ліквідаційне засідання.
When Mykola Lysenko was buried in 1912, more than 100,000 Ukrainians followed the funeral procession through the streets of Kiev. The event heralded the start of the first Ukrainian mass demonstration against Russian oppression.
In this piece called Dumka Shumka, Lysenko was inspired by Kobzars. It's a sort of Ukrainian travel and troubadours. They went from town to town and sang historical songs, accompanied by a special Ukrainian instrument, kobzar. And in 1937, Stalin gathered all of them to a sort of conference in Kharkiv, and all of them were killed there. Det är, förutom att vara genre, det är, om man översätter från ukrainska, betyder också en tanke. Så det är ungefär så som man tänker, man berättar. Den här första delen som är så långsam, det kan man nästan höra alla den här drian, den här, du vet, från kobza och sen väldigt sån här recitativ melodi. Och sen tillkommer den här shumka som är bara en väldigt eldigt folkdans som går snabbare och snabbare mot slutet.
Korani is one of Sweden's foremost cellists. He associates the language of Mykola Lysenko with the sentiment in the music of another composer of Ukrainian descent.
This piece by Lysenko, who I think was around the same time as Tchaikovsky, and they're not the same, obviously, but they share a lot of the same sentiments or similar sentiments. During his lifetime, he, for instance, he wrote an opera with the Ukrainian language being sung, and it was not allowed by the Russian Empire. He was not allowed to have it performed, and unless he changed it to Russian. This piece is extremely beautiful and lyrical and melancholic, I'd say. It has the power to grab your heart, I think.
The Ukrainian people have lived through war and conflict several times over the past centuries. They were forced to battle against each other because of the territory being split between different empires: the Austro-Hungarian, the Polish-Lithuanian, the Russian, and the Soviet empires. Ukrainian attempts to claim independence have been beaten down time and again. The Russian intervention in 2014 is the first to intercept independent Ukraine.
It's quite easy to sing when I play with you. You make it much easier for me.
Opera singer Lutando Quave was born in South Africa, but is a Swedish resident today who performs extensively on major European and North American stages. He identified immediately with the sentiments of Mykola Lysenko's setting of Shevchenko's Testament.
As a South African myself, I grew up partly from apartheid, which is the system that really was segregating against black people and whites at the time. So to read that poem, I can really relate so much to it because the words are really powerful, and the frustration and all what is going on into the context is really incredible to read. Yeah, it's basically a continuous prayer that you can basically have an amen. Anything that I'm wishing for is not necessarily happening, and it's not something that looks like it will happen. So yeah, that's how I understand it. And
It makes no difference to me if I shall live or not in Ukraine, or whether anyone shall think of me mid foreign snow and rain. It makes no difference to me. In slavery I grew mid strangers, unwept by any kin of mine. In slavery I now will die, and vanish without any sign. I shall not leave the slightest trace upon our glorious Ukraine, our land, but not as ours own. No father will remind his son or say to him, repeat one prayer for him, for our Ukraine. They tortured him in their fall lair. It makes no difference to me if that son says a prayer or not. It makes great difference to me that evil folk and wicked men attacked our Ukraine, once so free, and rob and plunder it at will. That makes great difference to me.
If you see the map of Ukraine, then you will understand much more, because the geographical position of the country is just very tragic. Because in one side is fantastic, the climate is great, we have the mountains, we have the seas, we have everything. But on the other hand, you're surrounded from so different neighbors, and this part of Europe was constantly increasing the appetites of all the neighbors around. That's why for centuries, either from east, either from west, we have been occupied and we have been divided. Once you're occupied, of course, you always feel that your culture is number two. And it doesn't give any possibilities to real developing of the country, of language, of culture, of education.
Den här stycket heter Consolation, och det är ju en tröst. Och egentligen om man tänker att 99% av ukrainsk musik är väldigt tragisk och är skriven i mål, för att sånt var livet, sånt var historia. Så den här Consolation som är tröst är skrivet i dur. Men de här cykorna i början eller genom hela den här stycket som går faktiskt i dur, tycker jag är nog väldigt starka. Viktor Kosenko is my personal favorite. He managed probably better than his colleagues. I mean, if he was not killed, he was not sent to Siberia. And it's probably because he lived all his life in a small provincial town in a central part of Ukraine and made his living by playing piano to silent movies, avoiding write big monumental works like symphony or opera. Han var inte sån här som Lysenko eller till exempel Koles, att han använde mycket folk baserat på folkmelodier, utan det är mest väldigt kosmopolitisk musik kan man säga, romantisk. Och det är nog en av de få stycken som har den här slutet som är lite...
One of the pieces chosen for Pasichnyk's recording project is the Carpathian Rhapsody by Mykola Lysenko.
My first instinct was this is a great encore piece or the final piece of a concert. And then when I started to rehearse it, to play it more, I realized it has much more, it has so many other colors as well. A huge element of both the Ukrainian folk music and also a lot of klezmer from the Jewish communities, which I love to play.
Composer Mykola Lysenko spent many summers in the Carpathians and has found musical inspiration in the folk music of this region.
Бачите, я довший час жив у Львові, близько Карпат. Ну, я часто бував в Карпатах. Там навіть моя бабуня мала таку ніби дачу, де я кожний рік там приїжджав. І тому я був знайомий із тими наспівами, так що це мій район.
The Skorik has always some extra chord in the middle, some secret stuff going on, different color change. And you can't really put your finger on exactly what it is, but it grows on you very fast. I would love to hear more Ukrainian music after this. For me, it has been, as I said, I didn't know I loved it before I played it.
Another important ingredient in Skorik's music is the element of exile. For generations, the Skorik family has been exiled to Siberia due to political reasons.
Мій прадід був з походження поляком, мій прадід. І Ось він брав участь в повстанні проти Росії в 63-му році і був засланий в Сибір. Мій дідо, він був у Львові, він був також інтелігентним. І тепер вже в 1915 році він теж був засланий в Сибір. І мій батько, і моя родина в 47-му році також були заслані в Сибір. Так що бачите, що була складна ситуація.
Swedish violinist Christian Svarvar associates the mood in Ukrainian music with a sentiment common to Swedish music.
There is a word in Swedish that I like. It's called vemod, and it's not really melancholia. It's some sort of still sadness or inner sadness or something. I wanted to play the most tender. I wanted to give the piece that shimmery and still this completely inner tenderness. And this violin that I changed to, a very fine Italian old violin, had a voice that I thought blended much more to the music and to Olga's beautiful voice.
Most of these composers which we trying to show to the world now, they had very, very tragic history, tragic lives. Because for composer, what is the most important thing that your works are accepted and you can hear them live, and you can hear them live in a good performance. And the biggest tragedy when you never heard them, or they are not accepted, they are just banned. For example, if you take Latuszynski, you can drive parallel to Mahler, Wagner, French Impressionism, and still very Ukrainian sentimentalism and use of folk melodies. It's a figure who should be on a top list of all the composers of that time.
А якби заграли його, наприклад, третю симфонію в Берлінській філармонії, де акустика, бо у нього оркестр вагнерівський, треба акустика. Це видатний твір, третя симфонія. Вона перевершує там, є знаменитий Сібеліус. Так це не гірше, це висока музика.
And when I first got the music, I didn't realize how beautiful it was. I had no recording. I knew nothing about the composers, and so it was a great joy when we rehearsed a few days ago, and I realized how extraordinarily beautiful it was.
I choose to play a small prelude by Vasyl Barvinsky. It's just his first opus, but you already can hear how ingenious this composer was. But in 1947, KGB destroyed all his works and sent both him and his wife to Siberia.
I am a composer without musical notation, Vasil Barvinsky is to have said about himself, due to the complete destruction of his original scores at the hands of the KGB. After returning to Lviv, he started to renew his sheet music. The name of the composer was rehabilitated a year after his death. However, the music of this composer was banned for a quarter of a century. One of Mykola Lysenko's foremost students, Kirill Stetsenko, was active during the liberation movement 100 years ago. Much like Lysenko, he infused his music with Ukrainian folklore. Kirill Stetsenko was arrested in Tsarist Russia, after which the Bolsheviks closed his choir studio.
You know, I often think that if the history would be different, the second piano concerto by Lev Koryvsky would be at least as often played in concert house as Rachmaninoff's second, but instead, when his brother, very famous Ukrainian musicologist and ethnographist, and his brother's entire family were killed by KGB, he basically stopped to compose. I hope that this is just a first project and we will come to piano concertos. At least now it's a first taste of Ukraine.
It's quite easy to put on the right emotions. It really makes me understand exactly what Ukraine is going through right now.
I think it's important to lift that cultural identity to show people that this is actually extremely similar to us, to me.
I feel very honored to be a part of it, to be a part of it.
I think it's just so sad that still we are so unaware of the treasures of the many composers that are living and dead in Ukraine.
For us, this music is so much connected with our history, with our drama, with our emotions, with everything what we have from our childhood.
I choose to name this project Consolation because music probably was the only consolation available for all these composers during this difficult time. It's a consolation for Ukraine as a nation, always been, and it's a personal, true consolation for me.